There we go, it's working. So, hello everyone, and thank you for watching. So today I am talking with Vicky Folland. Hi Vicky, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? Thank you for
I'm
having me.
good. You are so welcome. I've just been telling you I'm such a fan of yours. I've wanted to speak to you for ages, so I'm so excited for this. So Vicky, you won the Green School of the Year at the Intelligent Instructor Awards. You won the Eco Instructor of the Year at the Go Roadie Awards. Tell me a little bit about that, what that means.
Um, yeah, very flattered to even be nominated, and absolutely over the moon to have won. I think a lot of people still don't really know what it looks like or what I do or why I got even nominated for the awards in the first place.
I'm one
So
of those, Vicky.
I think there's a lot
Um,
of jargon goes on around it, but actually, what does it all really mean? There's a lot of
yeah,
it's a bit baffling, I think. Um,
I think it can. I think there's a lot of stuff in our industry that's baffling. That's a great word. I love that. Baffling. It can be a little bit overwhelming and a little bit, exactly what does that mean? So tell me what carbon neutral does actually mean and why you decided to go carbon neutral.
I think it was during some sort of lockdown. We had that many, I can't remember which one it was, but during some sort of lockdown, I was sat at home and my kids were asking questions, and obviously the environment got a lot better and all the wildlife started coming out, and the world we lived in was a very, very different place when we were all locked down. And my kids had been involved in the eco council at school, so full of how do we recycle and why, and reusing things and sort of reducing our carbon footprint. So they said, could we go online and look at our carbon footprint and what it looks like for us as a household? And actually, it was quite high. And
Mhm.
then I started thinking, well, I contribute massively to that. I'm a driving
Mm.
instructor. I'm out in my car all the time, and the amount of fuel that's used and emissions that are produced. So I started having a little look at what I could do about it. So I came across a online calculator to look at offsetting the carbon, but then wanted to go a little bit further. So as well as the offsetting, which makes it neutral, so all it carbon neutral means is whatever you produce, you've got to
Yeah.
do something to balance that sort of, so it takes it
Okay.
away. Where if you were like net zero, the idea is to produce as little as possible. That can be difficult given the nature of our job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so then I started up, and then I went and bought an electric car, and then got online diaries and a few other bits and bobs, so that I could say that I was carbon neutral. So it's not just eco driving. There's a whole sort of other side to that as well.
It sounds fascinating, and I've just been saying to you, and I'll say to everyone else here as well. I'm going to use the word ignorant, but I don't mean ignorant. This is not my forte. This is not my area of expertise. I have a petrol 1.4 car that will not talk about because it's just come out of Vauxhall and it's going back in next week. And that's my knowledge. My knowledge of the car is you put the key in, you turn it on, and you drive it. I'm not massive on everything else to do with it, the mechanical side of it or the carbon side of it. And so, this for me, having this chat is so beneficial. You mentioned about carbon offsetting. Tell me a little bit more what that is, what that means, where we do that.
So I use an online calculator on carbonfootprint.com, and I've used them for the last 4 years. So you pop in there your details of your vehicle. So they have a database. So you can do it generally, or you can go very specific to your vehicle. And then you can either do how many miles you travel each year, or you can pop in how many litres of fuel you've used over the course of a year. So that would take a bit more accuracy of going,
Yes.
taking a log of your receipts and things and knowing exactly how many litres and things you'd put in, and that calculates what it thinks you've produced in CO2. So for the fuel that you're using, the waste that comes out of your car is carbon dioxide that gets released into the environment. So the average instructor working through it, 33, I've got a calculation, Becky, the average instructor working
Amazing.
33 hours a week would roughly cover about 30,000 miles a year. That seems
Okay.
a lot, doesn't it? But we're on the go constantly, constantly on the go.
Yeah.
And then there's the
Yeah.
running around in between lessons as well, getting from
Absolutely.
pupil to pupil. So that would produce about 7 tons of carbon dioxide into the environment every year.
Wow. That's a
So
lot, isn't it?
it is
So,
a lot. So one
so
ton. Sorry, go on, Becky.
no, 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 carry on.
So a lot of people don't sort of really know what that looks like. So
Yeah.
roughly 1 ton of carbon dioxide would be produced if you flew from Paris to New York as a return flight. That would be a ton.
Oh wow. So yeah, so we do a lot then. We do a lot
We
of
do a lot.
a lot of damage. Is that the word? A lot of damage to the environment?
Absolutely, absolutely. If
Mm.
you think of all the instructors that are out there, and the amount of gases that are being produced out into the environment, it is quite high.
It is actually. That's quite scary, really. I remember some people here might have seen it. It was a Lee Evans sketch a long, long time ago, and he was saying about we've all got to watch our carbon footprint, and he said he got a letter. They'd lit up Wembley or something, and they'd done all this, that, and the other. And then he got a letter in the post that said about carbon footprint. And he was like, oh, it turns out it's my fault because my lamp is on in the living room, kind of thing. And, and I guess we've all got our part to play in stopping this from happening. Do you think as an industry we're going to be forced at some point to not be producing any emissions? How do you think it's going to go for us guys?
Eventually, well, they keep putting the date back, don't they, for us all going electric. They're going to stop producing combustion engine vehicles potentially, but that date keeps moving further and further away. But then the government as well have got a target for when, as businesses, we all should be reducing our emissions and aiming for sort of net zero. And the date they've got in mind for that's 2050. So we are going to have to make some changes along the way as just business owners to make sure that we're complying. Hopefully, a lot of that will be led by the DVSA closer to the time, and maybe the way that we have to undergo our training or what driving tests and things will look like might change as well to help support that. They've already done their bit going on their iPad, haven't they? We've got rid of the paper. So just even little changes like that make a huge difference.
So what do you think, when you say little changes and they've already done that, what do you think we could do? Because I'm not going to rush out and buy an electric car. I'm going to be honest. I like my little Corsa. What changes do you think for someone like me who does like my little Corsa, what could I do to help my carbon footprint, to help me go carbon neutral? What can I do?
Well, eco driving and teaching that across all your pupils makes a big difference to you as a business. But then if you think the amount of people that you teach to drive over the course of a year, you've taught all of those to eco drive. So now they're all producing less emissions. Next year, you're going to teach another however many people to drive who are all going to drive, hopefully, in an eco-friendly way and reduce their emissions. So as an instructor, you might think, well, what difference does it make? But the fact that you're teaching that to those people, it spreads, doesn't it? It spreads further wide. So that'll make a big difference, teaching eco driving.
Tell us a little bit more about teaching eco driving then, what eco driving specifically means, and maybe any tips you've got to teach it.
Oh, absolutely. So eco driving uses a lot of the same skills as defensive driving, where defensive driving, the main outcome is we're trying to reduce crashes and collisions. Eco driving, the main outcome is to try and reduce the emissions that are produced. If you're eco safe driving, you're combining those skills together. So hopefully as well, by driving in an eco way, we're driving in a much safer way. We should have better planning, anticipation. We should have better driver attitudes and behaviour, which massively will reduce our risk on the road as well. So that can only be a good thing. Just things like coming off the accelerator nice and early, braking nice and smoothly, slowing your gear changes down a little bit instead of washing straight through the gear stick, a little pause through neutral, make those nice and smooth. Block changing makes a big difference as well. Not coasting. People sometimes sort of, I've heard it referred to as like doing a Flintstones and putting it in neutral and letting it roll. That doesn't help at all. It's a bit of a misconception. Just making sure your tyres are correctly inflated so you've got less rolling resistance. Get rid of your top box because that creates extra air resistance. So
there's actually quite a lot that we can do to help in car.
Little changes. Just little changes can make a huge difference.
That's amazing. I see a lot of people with the little top boxes. They're like aerodynamic ones, the little L boxes on the top. Is that them? Is that them doing their step, do you reckon, to help?
It will help. Yeah, it will help absolutely. But do you need it? Can you just put your little magnet on the front or the back?
That's true. That's definitely something that I'll think about in the future. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that there could be some other ways that we could help with our carbon footprint. So we've talked a little bit about what we could do in the car and how we could help our learners. And I love how you said, you know, think about all the people you've taught in 1 year that are then going to go off and carry on doing it and going off and doing it even more. I think that's really great. And you know, linking to more the stuff that I do, if we're doing things in a client-centered way, then they're hopefully going to continue that behavior, which is great. What else could instructors do? Is there anything else that we could do apart from going off and buying an electric car that could help?
Absolutely. Get rid of all your paper. That makes a big difference. People don't like it anyway. We've moved on, haven't we? So getting an online diary massively helps. And there's some great online diary apps out there. I used to use GoRoadie, and then I've just changed to My Drive Time. And my pupils love that. They text them a reminder. I've always got my diary on me, so when I get the messages at like 11:30 at night, what time's my lesson in the morning, I'm not having to clamber out of bed and go in my car and get my diary out. It's just all there, isn't it? So that makes a difference. And the pupils love that. They do love an online diary. And I've done all my accounts online as well now. So completely
Fantastic.
paperless. I just email it all across to the accountant, then email me back anything that I need. So it just cuts out all of that as well.
So getting rid of paper, that's going to help massively. You mentioned GoRoadie and My Drive Time. I'll chuck Total Drive in there. I'm a Total Drive girl. But yeah, the benefits are great. And like you say as well, kids these days, that makes me sound old, but kids these days definitely they're on the phone all the time, aren't they? And you know, it can help thinking more instructor side, not just the eco-friendly side. It can definitely help with things like you say, it texts them their reminders. We know that they've then accepted our driving school terms and conditions, so then there can't be any issue there. So lots of benefits, not just the eco way. And I love the term you said, eco-safe, combining eco-friendly and defensive. I think eco-safe is fantastic. And I don't think that's a term that I've seen knocking about. I've seen carbon neutral, I've seen net zero, and I've seen eco-friendly and green. I like eco-safe. That sounds good.
So there is a box on the driving test report for eco-safe driving. So if the examiner feels like there's anything of note they could put in there, so they might just say, you could have block changed, you could have maybe used cruise control if it was available. I love it when examiners give a little bit of eco feedback at the end.
Is that on the L test, or is that for ADIs for PDIs for the part 2?
I've got no idea whether it be on the PDI part 2 test, but it's definitely on the L test. Yeah.
What kind of faults could crop up in that box, do you reckon?
So possibly too many. I mean, I've never had anybody fail for it. And all of the ex-examiners that are on TikTok will know far better than me. But things like, say, block changing, maybe not planning and anticipating properly, harsh braking, harsh acceleration, things like that will possibly come under there.
Amazing. So going back to the tips that you mentioned, if we're teaching them like that, then hopefully that box is never really going to get ticked. Yeah, they're going to sail through, which is what we want.
Another thing you could do as well is try and plan your day and your diary a little bit better. So instead of being backwards and forwards all over the place, what is the most economical way I can cover these miles today? Or I don't need to be here, there, and everywhere. Could I plan it better?
That's a really great tip, especially for any PDIs watching. I remember being a PDI and I was sort of traveling 20-30 minutes in between lessons because that's what I'd been given from my sponsor, and I didn't think I could say no, and I was going here, there and everywhere, and you end up a little bit like a headless chicken. And at some point you have to say, actually, that doesn't work for me, and that's okay for you to, you know, say, this is my area today. And yeah,
it's a much more efficient use of your time. You've got to think, at the end of the day, you're running a business, so what's the way that you can maximize your profit? Well, I need to reduce the amount of fuel that I use. That's instantly going to maximize my profit. So if we can get rid of those unnecessary to and fro-in trips, that really we could have just planned it a little bit better. So I think I have a day on a Wednesday where lots of them are in and out of college at different times, so I try and I know their timetables, right, I'm going to drop you off and pick you up from the same place.
Yeah, that's really great. That we have a lot here, Sheffield College. The timetables can be all over the place, can't they, sometimes? So that's great if you can try and match it. I mean, it's not always possible, is
No,
it?
it's
But if you
not.
can,
No. It's not an
yeah.
ideal world, is it? And then you think you've got your day sorted, and then a pupil will say, "Actually, can you get me from my nana's today?" Yes. I don't want
Yeah, I'll off to my boyfriends. Drop me off at my boyfriends instead. Yeah.
to. Absolutely. I was out in
So,
Ireland, and how they arrange their driving lessons is they've got an area and they have designated drop-off points and pick-up points. So
okay.
a driving instructor might sort of use maybe a retail park or something as a thing, and might say, "I'm going to pick all my lessons up today from Costa at the retail park," and that's where they're based out of all day.
Wow, that's a great idea. And I guess the benefits of that, I guess it's a little bit of routine, bit of structure, which can be useful, but then it's reducing those, reducing your fuel use as well, which you mentioned. And I guess everything we've talked about, of why we want to go carbon neutral, we want to offset, what we're using. You've mentioned the cost, and I guess that's probably going to be the biggest thing that people are going to resonate with, because it is, isn't it? Money drives everything. How much realistically better off can you be going from a combustion engine car to an electric car, which we'll talk more about in a minute, the difference of them, but how much better off can you actually be?
So electric's not for everybody. I completely appreciate that. It depends whether you can charge it up efficiently. So if you've got to pay to charge it up, like at the petrol station things, when you see at the services and you've got all those banks of electric ones, that is not
Yeah.
the cheapest way to charge a car. If you can charge it overnight at home, it works out really effective. Electric cars don't need as much servicing because there's no moving parts, so there's no oil changes and things like that to be done. There's no fuel filters and things that need to be cleaned out. We've got a battery, so they need much less servicing and maintenance as well, which is obviously a massive cost saving going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'd never really thought of it like that. So it's a little bit like a toy car, with a
Yeah,
battery. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, if anybody's had has got kids who's had an electric car, probably for Christmas, gets used for a couple of months, and then it's in the back of the garage.
Yeah.
You plug it in, you charge it up, away you go, to just an overgrown version of that.
Wow, I love that. That's a really great way of putting it. I think that's brilliant. So combustion engine versus electric. Combustion engine, I'm guessing, is what I've got, my little petrol 1.4 Corsa. Yeah. And then we've got an electric. So what is the massive difference? Like if you were to, I'm going to say if you were to explain it to someone that doesn't know, explain it to me. What's the massive difference? And is one better than the other? Carbon reasons with the electric's better, but should we all be heading towards electric ASAP, or a combustion engine still okay for now? Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that.
I've got both, and I've got the best of both worlds. And again, I appreciate not everybody can run two cars. I've had my Mini a long time now, big being part of the family. So I've had that a long, long time. And I was just saying to you, I wasn't prior to starting this, it's got 130,000 miles on the clock now. Which is a lot. And I've got the original clutch and the original gearbox. So eco driving definitely does work. Just with the
Wow.
sort of like wear and tear on your parts and things, it does work. I won't keep my electric car that long because the battery starts to not be as efficient. Exactly the same as on your iPhone. If you are
Yeah.
charging your phone up all the time, you're not charging it the right way. You've got to sort of charge it for sort of battery life and health. So if it's
Mm.
constantly plugged in, constantly being overused, and the battery doesn't work the same. So
Mm.
exactly the same. So my electric car won't say 130,000 miles, I'm quite sure.
I think my biggest worry is, with an electric car, and this probably will never happen, and this is probably just my brain, but literally just driving down a motorway or something and it just stops, the battery just cuts out. Like how your phone just suddenly can die.
Yeah,
Can that happen, or are they built to last a decent amount?
yeah, absolutely. And the same as in your car set, it can just break down, can't it? You can be just go
Yeah.
down the way and you can just get a breakdown. It's
Well,
exactly
touch
the
wood.
same. Oh, hopefully not, hopefully not. But it can happen. Um, you know, modern cars and technology, you've got a lot of sensors and things in. So hopefully, before anything went wrong, you would get some sort of notification. But there's exactly the breakdowns happen, regardless of whether you're petrol, diesel, electric, hybrid, whatever else you run in your the McDonald's wagons, I think, run off biofuel, don't they, from the the fryers. So whatever you're running it on,
Really?
breakdowns will happen.
I've never heard of that. That's a whole other conversation. I've no, not a clue. Not a clue.
I'm sure it says on the side of the wagons when you next time you follow a McDonald's wagon, have a little read of the side.
I will. I definitely will.
A lot of people get put off electric cars. I think battery range anxiety is a real thing.
Mm.
How long is it going to last? Is my usage going to change? The usage that you get driving down a motorway, the battery starts to like sort of tick down like almost in seconds, and you're thinking, am I going to make it? I think you've really got to change your mindset when you're an electric car driver. And that you do learn to drive a lot more eco-friendly because you want to increase that battery range that you've got.
Yeah. I've driven an electric car before, and I remember I got in and I was like, oh, it's not on. How do I turn it on? And my foot sort of tapped the gas ever so gently, and I was like, well, and I just went, and I had no idea it was even on. I felt like I was in a rocket ship. It was crazy. Because obviously, yeah, I'm used to the noise and knowing that my car is on. I'm quite an auditory driver, auditory person, and I couldn't hear it at all. And I know sometimes a point to make with learners as well with electric cars is, sometimes you can say, can you hear the car that's coming, or can you hear the vehicle, or pedestrians, can you hear what's coming? But electric cars, you haven't got that, have you? You haven't got that awareness of listening. You've got to kind of just spot them.
Absolutely, and even though it sort of makes a bit of a whirly sort of noise as you go in,
Mm.
but people haven't associated that noise with a car. It's
Yeah.
new still. Our brains haven't quite connected the dots together, especially if you've got earphones on, you've got hood up, and you've got no peripheral vision. So it's something that we talk about the awareness of pedestrians and cyclists around us. What could we do to make ourselves known? Do we need to be flashing our lights? Do we need just to give a little toot with the horn so people are aware we're there? Especially in car parks, people aren't
Yeah.
aware that you're about to move off. There's no indication at all that there's a car being turned on or it's going to start moving. So you've got to be a little bit more aware, I think, of your more vulnerable road users, especially.
Yeah, that's a really great point to make. My neighbours across the road, they have an electric car. I couldn't tell you what brand or make or model or whatever. It's red, that's what I can tell you. But I know when it's home, I know when they're home, because the flipping noise it makes is when it reverses, the beeping, that's really loud, which I think is great. I wonder why is it so loud when it beeps? Is that just because of the points you've made? The fact that it's so quiet usually? It's
Yeah, absolutely. So it's
so
there
loud.
to alert you, especially while you're reversing.
Mm.
Otherwise, you wouldn't know, would you, that it was coming up at you? So, plus the
Yeah.
same as when a wagon's reversing or whatever starts beeping, doesn't it? So, anything that we can do to make ourselves more visible and make
Mm.
sure people know that we're there can only be a good thing. Um, a lot of
And
my
I
kids
guess,
have got different types of neurodiversity actually really like the electric car. Some of them are quite
yeah.
frightened and it by the sound of accelerating and the noise of the
Yes.
engine.
Yeah.
So a lot of them, especially the ones who've got sensory issues and needs,
Yeah.
much prefer that quiet.
That's a great point to make. Yeah, I teach some learners with additional needs, and I have one lady at the minute, and we can't have the windows open because she can't stand the noise, and the radio can't be on. It's got to be nice and quiet in the car. So that's a really great point to make, definitely. And I guess like what you've said as well about raising our awareness around if we're using that reverse noise beeping going on, that's going to help other learners be alerted to us sooner, anticipate that we're there, plan sooner, which means they're driving more eco-safe, which in turn is helping everything. It's like
Absolutely.
we've come full circle.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about stop-start technology, what that is, what it means? Can you explain how you can benefit from that?
Absolutely. So a lot of us turn it off because we find it quite annoying, but actually we can really reduce our emissions that we're producing. So when we're sat idling, where we're not moving but the engine's ticking over, we're still producing a lot of emissions. So by using that start stop technology, we can reduce the emissions that we're producing between 5 and 10%, which doesn't sound massive. But if you think maybe especially in busy areas in cities and things, if we reduce the emissions being produced in a massive city by even 5%, the quality of the air would be much better. We're all sat in traffic breathing that in through the vents as well. Do you really want to be breathing in all of the stuff coming out of the back of the car in front? So by just using that start stop, just cut the engine off, we can save a bit of emissions, improve the air quality, and hopefully we're not all breathing it in as well.
And I guess if there's a lot of cars doing that, or if eventually we can get everybody having vehicles with stop-start technology, that's going to make a massive, like you say, 5 to 10%. If everybody's doing it, that's going to make a massive difference on the way to being net zero. You called it net zero by 2050. And
Yes,
that's where we have we're not producing any carbon emissions whatsoever.
that's the plan. It seems
That's
like such a stretch though, doesn't it, at the minute, because you can't imagine what that would look like. And it won't happen overnight. It's just making little changes along the way. You think, when we started recycling, it seemed so alien that you would have a recycling bin at home.
yeah.
And we were all a bit confused what we should be putting in it and why we should be doing it. And I'm never going to use it. Where now I wouldn't think, I would feel odd putting a plastic bottle in the normal bin.
Yeah.
Change did happen and we all adapted to it. And the same with this, the change will happen and we will all adapt to it.
I mentioned about my sort of ignorance to this, and as I said to you before we started recording, ignorance is probably the wrong word, but what I meant is I don't know enough about it. My knowledge and understanding of being eco-safe and being eco-friendly and being green and the carbon emissions thing, my knowledge wasn't fully there. So I feel like I've learned loads. Do you think there are driving instructors in our industry who are ignorant? And what I mean by that is they are, nope, I'm not using an app for my diary, and nope, I am not going to get an electric car, and I am not going to. Do you think we've got that in our industry still, and that's going to be a bit of a fight? Do you think it'll get to the point where they're going to have to be forced?
Possibly. Any change in our industry is always met with a little bit of friction, isn't it? Not long after I qualified, all driving instructors were made to take a hazard perception test, and there was a lot in the test centre. I'm not doing this, and well, you're going to have to, aren't you? And they did. They all went. They grumbled, but they did go and do it. So any changes that are made, there's always a bit of a kickback, isn't there? Some more than others. We don't all have to go electric. We don't all have to get an online diary app. But if we all make one small change as an industry, that'll make a huge difference. You think how many instructors there is across the country? Is there 47,000 instructors? If I just pulled that number out of the air. So if we all made a tiny difference, that would make a massive difference. And pupils that are coming through now, they do care. They are bothered about the environment. They are nervous about what their future's going to look like and the world that we're living in. So it can be a massive selling point, actually, for your business as well, for you to be able to say, actually, I care too, and this is what I'm doing, and this is our contribution. Offsetting, I think, maybe sounded a bit scary, and how do I do it? And there's a calculator. Well, actually, it's really, really easy to do. It's not very expensive to do it, but that might make a difference to even a handful of pupils. That might just be enough that, oh, I'll go with you instead of person down the road.
Yeah, I love that. Trying to kind of tap into what's going to work for you as an instructor, what's going to work for you as a business, and what's going to help the learners too. And I think you're right, they do care, kids these days. Here we go again. They do, they're fed so much on TikTok of, what's happening to our world and pollution and the environment and stuff. And I like how you said you could use it as a unique selling point as well, and it could make you slightly different. I guess the aim is that it doesn't make we're not going to be unique. Ideally, we're going to want everybody on that page where we're all doing our bit. And hopefully some people will see this and think, okay, there is something I could do. Like you say, even if it's just a small change. I think that's great. So you're not just a driving instructor though, Vicky. You do loads, don't you? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I also have a fleet badge. So I do associate with Rossborough. I'm an associate trainer, so I get to travel all over the country and all around the world, delivering driver training to different businesses to meet their needs. So that could be assessor courses, it could be defensive driving, advanced driving. English is not always people's first language, especially when we're doing it abroad, so that can be a challenge. But it's great to be able to go and see what driving looks like in the rest of the world.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Driving, but actually, it's different everywhere you go.
Is there anywhere that's like mega green, that's got it for eco-safe, or are the UK leading that? What would you say is the best place that you've been to?
I was lucky enough to go out to Saudi Arabia out in May, and their whole thing is sustainable tourism and work. So we were in an eco-friendly hotel. They're massively trying to reduce any emissions. So all of their workers go on defensive and eco-safe driving, and they make a huge push. There's no plastic water bottles allowed on site at all. Even the hotel room keys were made from bamboo instead of your normal plastic ones that you get.
Wow.
That whole area where we got to go for Red Sea Global was sustainable. It was really impressive to see.
Yeah, it sounds it. That sounds so good. And do you think the UK will get to that level? Is that the goal? Is that the government's goal?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easier in a place where you're just building from scratch.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of infrastructure and things that's very old. How do you go around changing all of that? But again, you know, little changes add up to make a big difference. So we don't need to necessarily wipe everything out and start again. But going forward, if we can all clean up our practices a little bit, it'll make a big difference.
I love that. Clean up our practices a little bit. I like that. So where can, if anybody's got any more questions, like I will have on eco-safe driving, going green, going carbon neutral, where can people find you, any of the instructors that are watching this today?
On Instagram, TikTok and Facebook, just at Vicky's Driving Tuition. But please feel free to drop me a message. I love talking about eco stuff.
I know, honestly, as I was saying to you, I love all of your videos. You do so much for our industry, for the eco side of it, which is why I really wanted to have this chat with you, because I know that so many people will feel like I will feel. And, you know, I've only ever grown up around a car, you know, what we know of a car. I've never kind of...
It's the unknown scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's change. It's like you say, it's adapting, and I am all for that. And I think the more knowledge you have and the more understanding you have on what these terms mean and how they can benefit everyone, I am all for it. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that I'll think about when I come to swapping cars. Hopefully not next week. Let's see what Vauxhall say.
Oh. So many people are having bad luck with their cars at the minute. Touch wood, I've been all right for a little while, but I did have a bad patch a couple of months ago. So.
Well, that's the thing, they're just so unreliable. And like you've mentioned, a massive positive of an electric car is less servicing, less maintenance. Of course, anything can go wrong, can't it? But that's definitely a huge selling point. So yeah, amazing. Have you got any kind of final thing that you could share with instructors? Anything to do with eco driving, defensive driving, teaching it, doing it, moving towards it?
Playing games works the best to teach it. So cup of water, can we drive without spilling it? How long can we drive without stopping? Really encourages good anticipation skills. Anything that makes it fun. So whatever that needs to be. One of my pupils was really focused on gaming. His whole world revolved around gaming. So he turned his whole driving lessons into games. So how many times could we get to a traffic light and make it change to green? Was a good game to play.
That sounds amazing. I tend to use, I will say to my learners, imagine you've got the Queen sat in the back. I liked the Queen. So the Queen is sat in the back and she's got a cup of tea and she can't spill a cup of tea. You're her chauffeur today and we can't let her spill her tea. Show me how you can let her not spill her tea.
Perfect.
That's a good one. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Vicky, and we will see you very soon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely. Thank you.